Welcome, everybody, to Practical Psychology, episode 26. My name is Joseph Wong. I'm one of the co hosts. Today, we are very happy to have Parsa joining us here. Parsa is based in Vancouver, BC. He's a BC mental health counselor. He's also a psychology graduate. And Parsa has lived in both Vancouver and Iran with a lot of shared experience. And Parsa is very passionate about how to support newcomers, especially in the Iranian community. And also talk a little bit about how the intercultural exchange and also make mental health more accessible to different cultural groups, to everyone in Vancouver and Canada at large. And welcome, Parsa, today.
Thank you, Joseph. Again, I appreciate you for having me today. I look forward to our conversation. I think this is great, giving chance to us to talk about these different topics that in a lot of circles are not discussed and are not proposed. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And Pastor, I know you speak Farsi fluently. You were
Yes.
born and raised and grew up in Iran, so you know the culture through a lived experience
Mhm.
before you came to Vancouver, Canada, here. The first topic everybody wants to know is the current war situation.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the Iranian community, your
Mhm.
own little circle, is reacting to that crisis?
Of course, yeah. So I think it's important to understand what happened now with what was just happening before, the war started. So we there was people took the streets and they they formed protests, and there was a deadly oppression that was carried out by the government of Iran. A lot of people lost their lives. There are different estimates, but I think the most recent one that I've read, and again, this is from a credible source, shows an estimate of around 45,000 people were killed in 2 days. So,
Yeah.
um, before even all these wars happening between Iran and Israel and Iran and US and Israel, people were mourning. And it's not just the people that like the families of the victims, but like the whole nation, you know.
Mhm.
I'm sure you remember there were rallies. I mean, there are rallies happening right now in Toronto, in Quebec, in Vancouver, all across the world, in US, in Europe, right? So um, people were sort of voicing their opinion that, you know what, some change is needed, and this cannot continue. And
Mhm.
in the meantime, all these political things were happening, on side of the Iran's nuclear program and missile program. Israel and US, they've been talking. There's been no negotiations, but it reached a point that the Iranian government said we're not going to stop producing the missiles, and we're not going to limit our nuclear program. And then it came to the point that the attack happened, right? So, Joseph, it's a very complex situation because uh, you might be surprised, and a lot of people that are, not Persian are surprised, rightfully so, but people are hopeful. People they're keeping their spirits high,
Mhm.
definitely no one will be happy to see their country bombed, right? To
Mhm.
see where you grew up, to see the buildings
Mhm.
that you always drive by, and you're not happy to see your city bombed, but the fear of continuing under the same regime and living under the same conditions, it's so high and it's so much, it's so big that people are hopeful that these things that are happening will weaken the government and would eventually lead to the government being toppled, by Iranians, by people of
Mhm.
Iran. So a lot of people, it's hard for them to wrap their mind around that. When your country's being bombed, why are you happy? Why are you hopeful? Like people were dancing in the rallies. They were celebrating and they were happy. So I think it's important to mention that the fear of living under the same situation, like the status quo, right? Like the fear of status quo is so high and is so much that people are happy that these things happen, that the attacks happened, right? And the Israel and US, they don't do civilian attacks. Um, they are not dropping a bomb on just randomly. No, they're attacking the infrastructure of the Iranian government. They're attacking all these different buildings that are um, for either for Iranian military or for the oppression groups, the IRGC group. So they're like targeted attacks. So that's also hopeful for us because it's not like, but again, we have been warned by Israel and US to not leave home, stay inside, don't go out because all these bombs are being dropped. Yeah, very difficult times, I would say, but at the same time, we are hopeful. There are a lot of people that have families in Iran, including myself. And internet is shut off right now. It's been what, like about what, 14 days, 13 days that there's no internet. And people are finding different ways with like VPNs and proxies and different things to just um, connect to the internet. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? But that's another thing, right? Like it's wartime, and then the government decides to shut off the internet, right? So how ruthless, how cruel, and how barbaric that is, right? Um, yeah, I hope that answered your question. I know that was a bit of a long answer, but
Parsa, can you tell us a little bit about right now in Canada, how does the Iranian community reach to the family members, the
Mhm.
parents, grandparents, children back home because there's no internet?
Yeah, so what happens right now is a lot of time people in Iran, they call you directly on your phone, right? So and again, that's costly because it's international call, right? And right now, there's this thing called a VPN, which is a virtual private network that allows you to connect to internet. Again, it like the connection is not going to be consistent and is not going to be cheap, but people they're purchasing VPNs, they're installing VPNs on their phones, and then they are making calls from either Iran or from here. So that's the only method of communication. Like I said, there's no internet, so WhatsApp would not work. Telegram would not work, right? Like Zoom calls would not work. Like it's just a keeping yeah, it is so brutal, it is so bad because you're worried about your loved ones, you're worried about your family, especially during the wartime, and you want to talk to them and you want to make sure they're fine and they're safe, right? So that's how people
Mm.
contact nowadays.
And Pastor, this is really brutal here because
Mhm.
international call is something that is antique.
Yes.
We didn't even think about it because
Mhm.
in Canada we have a lot of newcomers, immigrants. They call or they use different things. It is for free for so long. I can't
That's right.
believe in 2026,
Mhm.
your community still have to deal with these big
Yeah,
challenges.
definitely. Yeah, you're right. International th calling is something of
Yeah,
90s or 80s, I would say, even,
yeah,
right?
exactly. It's like going backwards
Yeah,
in history.
that's right. Yeah.
So, Hasa, I have a question for some of the
Mhm.
viewers here. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit of the term of Iranians and
Mhm.
Persians? Are they the
Mhm.
same term or different?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, Joe. I have heard an explanation for the difference between these two, and I will explain what I've heard. Again, there's different explanations for this, and it's hard to sort of test the reliability of the explanation because there's so many of them. But I'll tell you, you know what it is. So. Um, there's two points to it. So you might hear Persians call themselves Iranians or Iranians call themselves Persians, and this actually goes back to 1979 when the Iranian Revolution happened. Um,
Mhm.
Iran did not have a good reputation then because of the stuff that were happening in the revolution. While the revolution happened, they took people took over the U.S. embassy in Iran, in Tehran actually, and then they took hostages. They took the people inside the embassy as hostages, right? So and this was on the news, and like BBC showed it, CNN showed it, right? So the picture of Iranians at that point was very tainted and was very very negative, right? So people started to introduce themselves as Persians, or we're Persians because
Oh, I see. Okay.
if they said Iranians, then all the negative connotation, all the reputation that
Mhm.
was with Iranians at that point would come up, right? So that's one thing. Um, Now the the Persian actually is an adjective for the word Persia, right?
Okay.
So who's someone from Persia is Persian, and Persia was this vast place, was this actually was an empire. If you might have heard about the Persian Empire, right? So um that's like back in the day. It was such a big empire. There was the Cyrus the Great, and there was the Darius the Great. So it comes from there, and people sometimes introduce themselves as Persians because they have the Persian blood. They have the blood like that, from the old times, right? And also when they talk about the language, right? You might hear they speak Farsi or they speak Persian, right? So that's another thing. So Persian also is a very ancient language, that like it's as ancient as Hebrew. It goes back like long time ago, right? So you might hear that too. They don't say they speak Farsi, they speak, oh, do you speak Persian, right? So it goes there. But yeah, so it's just different ways of saying the same thing, but
Okay.
it depends on like how you like to frame it technically. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's say if I meet somebody, because let's say I'm Chinese,
Yeah.
if I meet somebody, so it would be appropriate to ask whether you are Iranians or whether you're
Mhm.
a Persian, and it will be appropriate terms.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
if they're
Uh,
Iranian, 100% they're Persian,
yeah,
because
okay.
because like people, let's say people from Afghanistan, for example, or people from Azerbaijan, they wouldn't introduce themselves as Persians, right? They will say, oh, we're Afghan, or we're from Azerbaijan, for example, right? Or we're from Turkey, we're Turks, right? So
Okay.
when someone says Iranian with a very very good confidence, you can assume that they're they're also Persian.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So, Parsa here, because I understand a little bit about the Iranian history,
Mhm.
and as you mentioned, there has been oppressions, very tight control with the regime, and life is very, very difficult and brutal, and prosecution,
Mhm.
and not just for like 1 or 2 years, it's like decades. How does it, when you're growing up in Iran at that time, did you
Mhm.
witness any sort of that intergenerational trauma,
Mhm.
natural trauma, that sort of thing, that sentiment?
Yeah, yeah. So, I feel like, Joe, at a population level, when you look at the country, right? The country, you are dealing with a complex trauma, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lived experience of most Iranians would show that complex trauma because And what I say complex because um, people have been through a lot, either through economic events, historical events, political events, right? I think that's part of being in Middle East. Middle East is a very volatile region, a lot of things happen there. And you see these complex trauma. Speaking about my personal experience, yes. My experience was hearing about the way we do things in my family, right? And then the opinions of the family, and understanding that outside home is not the same as inside, right?
Mm.
And going to school and learning about stuff that we were just we were so kids and we had no idea what they meant, right? But we had to memorize some stuff. We have to, we had to pretend that we understand and we know it and we will, write an exam on it, right? So, it's as if you're living two lives, right? You're going to school, then you're not going to talk about political stuff. You're not going to talk about that in school because, who knows, right? Um, and then when you're home, that's different, right? You can talk about different things. And as you may know, schools in Iran up to university, they are separate. So there's girls' school and there's boys' school.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So um, I think also that is something that is not really good for our youth and for people that
Mm.
that grew up because um, being able to talk to the opposite gender, spend time, understand each other, having that conversation, right? Is very important.
Mm.
But a lot of people, their first interaction with the opposite gender outside the personal settings is in university, right? So I think that adds a layer to that trauma because
Mm.
you know it's people come from different perspectives. They really can't understand each other because they haven't spent time together, right? Um, Perhaps the only time they spent time together was in kindergarten, right? Because in kindergarten the kids and like the boys and
Mm.
girls can be together, but as soon as they go to elementary school, it's separate, right? So um just me drawing from that experience, um I felt like when I arrived in Canada, like the communication skills that I wanted to have with anyone, it was just not there because I was just so used to just one type of communication, and that was communication to my friends, which are boys, which is the same age, right? But communication with someone that's younger than me, with someone that's older than me, the opposite gender, right? And
Mm.
Also foreigners, because
Mm.
in Iran is pretty homogenous in terms of the population. Like you don't grow up with foreigners, right? It's mostly the fellow Iranians that you grew up with, right? Um, yeah, yeah. I think these are some of the challenges that I experienced.
Well, Parsa, this is huge here for a lot of the viewers, especially in Canada.
Mhm.
This is very different here because you have the private and public. Because in Canada, mostly people speak their mind
Mhm.
at home, outside, social media freely. So tell us a little bit about this private and public. Does it mean
Mhm.
public in the school they're teaching you a little bit about the regime, the politics, and what exactly do they teach?
Mhm. Well, during my studies in
Mm.
school, it's pretty much you can call it the propaganda, right? So
Yeah.
when you read history, you read the 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 changed version that
Yeah.
is something that is designed by them, by the higher.
Okay.
Um,
So they changed the
yeah,
history
that's
for
right.
the history lessons.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's only when I grew up and when I was able to look at other sources, other books, right? The books that were not allowed to be published, in Iran because of, whatever they like to talk about, um, that I learned, oh no, well, there's a different side to this, right? And
Okay.
it's honestly it's hard to expect a teenager to be able to, think about all the different aspect of things, right? To think
Yeah.
about, well, there's a different side to it, right? It's actually unfair to expect that person, but it's about providing as many sources and as many things for youth to read about, and then they can
Okay.
make up their mind, right? But it was pretty one-sided, whatever we were learning and whatever we were going through in terms of our curriculum and like whatever school related that was. But um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, it's only after I grew up and I started reading
Mm.
other books that I realized, well, no, it looks like it's just one part of the story that's being told. And there's a whole book
Mm.
that that was not mentioned that we didn't really learn about.
So, Pastor, can you give us some examples of that
Mm,
one-sided extreme agenda in
mm,
school they're trying to teach the teenagers?
of course. So um, there's one example that comes to my mind right now, and um, that is regarding history. So, before the current regime, we had Pahlavi regime, and the founder of the Pahlavi regime, his name is Reza Khan, and Reza Khan actually was a military man. Okay, so he was a military man. He was from north of Iran, and he was a very disciplined person. Um, but the depiction you get from this person in the book is that this was a rude, uneducated, sort of like aloof type of person that um, was just trying to force people into a change, right? Trying to push people into a change, right? So that was a depiction that you get when you're reading the history books, right? So but when you go back and you read about what he did and the changes he provided for people of Iran. So Joe, like back then Iran was just 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 like people were they didn't have a uniform, right? Like there was no roads, right? Like cities were not formed, right? And this is in like let's say about 100 years from now. So 100 years ago,
Wow.
right? That was the case, right? People we had a lot of illiterate people. They didn't go to school, right?
Wow.
So he got that Iran, he received that Iran, and then he made it into one of the like most prosperous nations in Middle East, right? So he did a lot of great things. Like he built the national railway in Iran. He built universities in Iran, right? He introduced the proper clothing, such as like suit and tie, for example. For the first time, people were learning about suit and tie because otherwise they were wearing anyone was wearing whatever, right? Like there was no uh, national uniform for people that like you had in Europe. There was nothing there, right? Um, he he really did a lot for Persians and for Iranians, right?
Wow.
But what you received when you were studying in school was that, oh, this is a rude, uneducated, disrespectful, aloof person that just was a dictator and then ruled. So that was the version we got, right? Um, So yeah, that's just one example. There's countless examples that like if I can think about, I will tell you. But anyone can remember many things that they only realize after growing up and reading other books or growing up and seeing the actual reality of the society, right? So yeah.
Well, so Pastor here, you mentioned about how the government they changed the history books to teach for the teenager in
Mm,
schools,
yeah.
and it looks like they're trying to do some sort of brainwashing.
Mm, mhm.
And tell me a little bit about that. Did the people fall victim to that brainwashing?
Mm. Um, yes, I did see some people. I did see
Uh,
some people really buying into the
okay,
propaganda and the brainwash and um you know, Joseph, I think that is expected and that is normal
okay,
because
yeah,
you
okay,
know
yeah,
we
wow.
might see we actually see that now even in Canada, right?
Mm,
You know how there's these extreme ideas and extreme
okay, yeah,
you know either a political orientation
mm,
or a sort of a mindset that people buy into, for example, right?
yeah, mm,
It's like, you know, people that are supporters of the Nazis here or separatists, for example, right? You
okay,
know,
yeah, yeah,
it's similar to that. But um, I think most people did not.
Oh, okay. So,
You
so
know,
most people in that classroom, when you're
Mhm.
growing up, they kind of know that we listen to this, but okay, we do it just for formality.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah,
see.
and
Okay,
I think
yeah.
they were informed by their families, right?
Okay,
That you know we're just hearing about this, and there's more to this, right? Um,
okay,
and you see that even now because
yeah.
now the majority of the population in Iran are they are saying what they want, and what they're saying, what they're looking for, and their needs are definitely not what the propaganda is saying,
Oh
right?
wow.
You know,
Okay, so there's a very strong private life here. They just
exactly.
not very spoken in the past, but
That's right.
now increasingly more outspoken.
Exactly. Yeah, there's I like to use the term eruption because all these years of oppression and all these years of limitation and pain and sanctions and everything decide you know leads into this eruption of emotions and wants and desires, right? Um
Oh,
and yeah, and it's very sad when that is met with bullets, when that is met with violence, right? As opposed to
yeah.
you know, a government that likes to hear and likes to solve the people
Mm.
problem.
Okay, yeah. So at that time here, Pastor, let's say if a teacher teach something and then tell the teenagers that they don't believe in it,
Mhm.
I imagine there are probably some repercussions to that teacher if they speak up
Mhm.
in public.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can
Uh,
imagine. Again, I never experienced it or never seen one,
okay,
you
yeah.
know.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
a lot of university professors, Joseph, in Iran, they need to go through a very long like filtering process.
Oh,
So
wow.
they need to go through a lot of questions and they need to be checked. Like government will
Okay.
check them so much before letting
Wow.
them to become a teacher, become a professor. Um,
Okay.
that happens a
Wow.
lot, you know? And again, that's
Oh.
sad because you might be a competent professor, you're a competent person, you're an educated person, but because of your social opinions, because of your religious opinions, because of your because of these, you may not be able to get that position, right? Um,
Wow.
like it's very sad, you know?
Wow. And you mentioned, Pastor, when you're growing up later, you read some books, to get
Yeah.
more educated about the other angles not presented by the regime, the government.
Mhm.
And because those books are banned, how do you go get to read those books?
Mm. Well, thankfully, Joseph, right now, online sources are a great,
Okay.
you know, they're great because because you have access to a bunch of books that um, otherwise you wouldn't have access to. So um, a lot of these books actually are published in Europe right now.
Yeah.
So the author found a publisher in Europe, and then they had a contract with them, so the books are published in Europe,
Yeah.
so you can actually purchase them, right? Um, and I think if you're looking for information, there's a very good chance that you're going to find some information. You're going to be able to find some good sources for them, right?
Yeah.
Again, thankfully, we're living in 21st century where we have access to so much information and so much good information. Um, back in the 90s or 80s or 70s, unfortunately, that was not the case, right? Yes.
Sorry for the interruption here. You were mentioning about thankfully there's some online and some books from Europe, so we can still get informed about the other perspective.
Mhm. That's right. Yeah. So what I was saying is a lot of people argue that if back in,
Mhm.
1979, in 80s and in 90s, if people had access to those information and they could read more and they could be more informed. Back then there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, there was uh, no
Yeah.
way to check this information. There was no chat GPT back then, right?
There's not
So
even Google, I think,
Google,
in
that's
the
right.
80s. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there was nothing, right? Um, if those things were there, they say the revolution might not even happen. Like it may not
Wow.
even take place if that was the case, right? But I mean, that's history and that has happened already. So there's no point in thinking, but yeah, yeah, I think again, I also like to applaud the current generation of people. They're um, very brave souls. They're very courageous, and also they're risk takers, Joe. Right? They are not as docile as previous generations, I would say. You know, they take risks. They read more. They can't be convinced easily, right? And that's what you want from your youth, from the young people, right? And I really hope that will result in some good things for everyone, for all the people of Iran.
Yeah, and for the viewers here, you are mentioning about the risk, and the risk means sometimes death.
That's right.
And I
That is
guess not just death to themselves, but maybe death even would the police even prosecute their families members?
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's usually what happens, after they're being killed, their family's under pressure. They will need to pay. They will need to pay to get their victim body. Like the family has needs to pay money to the killer to get the body of their son or their daughter or whoever, right? So when you
Mhm.
think about it, like how cruel and how sad that is, right? And
Mhm.
when you think about these things, it gives you a context to understand this uprising and to understand why people are saying, you know what, enough is enough. We don't want to do this anymore, and we need change, right? We need something to change.
Mm. Also, Pastor, life is very, very different in Iran compared to Canada.
Yes.
It would be very hard for Canadians, including myself, to imagine we have to live a double life, a
Mm,
kind of private family life and a public life, like going to restaurants and other
that's right.
things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's you're right, and maybe for a typical person here, and again, everyone has their problems and issues, I want to say that. But a typical person here, maybe their concern is, oh, well, gas prices are so high this week. You know what? Maybe I can't fuel my car to the brim. I'm not gonna, put the gas all the way to the car, right? Maybe I need to put less, right? Or, oh well, maybe today is cold. I need to put more clothes on. It's raining. Okay, like these things are they're like jokes to people of Iran, because they've been through so much, right? They've been through war, they've been
Yeah.
through
Wow.
sanctions, right? They've been through all these hardships, like economic hardships, right? Um, the limitation of personal rights. Like it's they're it's like living in two different worlds, right? Um,
Mhm.
and sometimes people are jealous. They say it's we feel unlucky that we were born in Iran, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that you might have heard about the birthplace lottery, right? So they feel like they
Mhm.
lost the lottery because they were born in Iran, right? These are stuff that I hear from my clients also too. So like
Mhm.
not just personal experience, but people are like, um, it's so unlucky. We feel so unlucky that we were born in Iran during that time. Maybe if we were born before that, it was a different story, or we were born like sometimes later, might have been a different story. But we were born in a time of tension and war and
Mhm.
economic hardships and oppression, right? So yeah.
And Pastor here, tell us a little bit more about because in Canada, our dollar is quite stable.
Mm,
I guess for a
mm,
lot of people living in different countries, their dollar is very stable. But I heard it's not the case in Iran,
that's
And on
right.
one hand, the dollar has dropped, the inflation has risen. I mean, same as Canada too. But
Mm.
can you tell us what is the extent in Iranian so
Oh yeah.
people know?
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Because when you understand this, you can also really put things in perspective in your mind about,
Mhm.
people's standard of living. So, um, it's been, I think, for the last um, 15 to 16 years, that's where we see the Persian currency, which is called rial, by the way. So rial
Yeah.
going going down, right? So from yeah, like from 14 years ago, um, at that point, dollar, the Canadian dollar, US dollar, and then real were kind of similar, right? I mean, always Canadian dollar and US dollar are stronger than our currency, the Persian currency, but they were similar. Like, if you wanted to send your kid to go study in a university outside Iran, you could, you could pay for his university. You can also pay for his living expenses, such as, housing and food and everything. Okay. But then from that point, due to sanctions, due to all these tensions with different countries, due to all the United Nations sanctions, the U.S. sanctions, and just the economic um, reality of the world we're living right now. So, if you are a nation that likes to work with other nations and be peaceful, then they're willing to work with you. Then your currency is gonna be fine, it's fine, your currency is not gonna become a US dollar, but then the difference is not gonna be same. Like if you go to Australia right now, the Australian dollar and Canadian dollar are not really different. Not really different, there's some difference. But you know, with all these tensions and challenges and um really Iran presenting itself as not a reliable partner, the someone that likes to wage wars and annihilate Israel, annihilate US, right? That resulted in the real technically becoming worthless, you know? So
What
so
percentage would you
Mhm.
say, so the
Mm.
Canadians or the viewers have some perspective?
Sure. So okay. So imagine if um for every US dollar you have to pay 150 Canadian dollar.
Okay.
So let's say for $5 USA, you're paying five times $150 of Canadian. So what's that number going to be? So it's going to be 750. So imagine for
Okay.
$1 of USA, you're paying 750, $750 Canadian.
Okay,
So
wow.
that's insane for $5, right? So that's the current state. It wasn't like this, it was 20, it was 5, it was 4. So, let's say for 1 US dollar, you're paying 4 Canadian dollar. Okay, all right. Like that is still high, but it's manageable, right? But through
Mm.
times, 4 became 10, 10 became 15, 15 became 30, 40, 50, 60, all the way
Wow.
to now that is at 150, 150, 160, I think. Yeah.
Wow. So he has dropped more than 10 times.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that affects everything because the prices in Iran also have increased, right? We have
Yeah.
double-digit inflation in Iran, right?
Mm.
So people, if they can't afford to pay for their own groceries at Iran, they cannot afford to send their kids outside Iran. They can't afford their housing
Wow.
costs, right?
Yeah.
So this gives you understanding of why people are in the streets, and it's not an ideological debate. It's a
Yeah.
economical as well, and it's just living, right? Like people like to live like everyone else, normal life, right? With access
Yeah.
to basic, basic needs of everyday life, which is, having a nice car, having food on your table, making sure you can buy gifts for your family and for your kids, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, there's a big deal here because when the currency drop, the basic groceries will become out of reach for even normal people.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's right.
So, Pastor, you also mentioned about even in the school system is highly regulated.
Mm,
The girls and boys are segregated.
mm, that's right.
Since after kindergarten, they're segregated into two
Mm,
groups until university.
that's right.
So this will be a huge shock and differences compared to the typical developmental in psychology, to
Mhm.
interact with the other gender.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
and
yeah.
and a lot of people say the a, a reason behind the divorce rate in Iran, again, I don't have the stats on the divorce rate, but in recent years, what I've read is that it has increased. You know, I feel like, and recent, I mean 10 years, 10, 15, not just, two or three. It really goes down to what you just mentioned, right?
Mm.
Um, when you are in an environment that allows you to interact with the opposite gender and to work with them, to
Oh
cooperate with them, to
yeah.
solve problems
Mm.
together from an
Yeah.
early age, right? You're in a much better position when later you go under the same roof and live as husband and wife,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
But when the first serious interaction and the intimate interaction, like it's not the boy's fault or like the girl's fault, but it's just the system, right? The system placed them like that
Mm.
in that environment that leads to this. And yeah.
Well, there's a big thing here because especially for both genders, going into the university age is usually the hormonal stages and all that. There's a lot
Yeah.
of pressure, internal and external, and
Mhm.
suddenly they have to start something like entirely brand new.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
there's a
right.
lot of tension and pressure and not knowing what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of my work with couple counseling, especially if
Yeah.
my clients are Iranian, is actually teaching them about those, teaching them
Yeah.
how to
Mm.
fight, how to fight
Yeah.
properly,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Mm.
because they don't have the training, they haven't been trained, they don't have the knowledge that maybe someone from Canada would have, so that involves for them to learn, how to interact with each other, how to talk to each other, how to resolve their problems together, right?
Oh yeah, and Parsa here, can you tell us a little bit about for the Iranian culture,
Mm,
for the sort of marriage, is it typically
mm.
the more free love, romantic marriages or arranged marriages? What is the customs there?
Yeah, I would say in the last 40 years or so, 40 to like 30, 40 years, I think the arranged marriage has become sort of extinct. So
Okay, I see.
it's we don't have it like I don't hear about it as often. Um,
Okay.
and mostly now it's people that um they do it intentionally, like, they go on,
Mm,
find someone,
mm,
again, I still feel like we are a traditional culture, like a lot of Asian culture. We're still in that category,
yeah,
I would say, stuff such as respecting your elders are really important, for example, respecting your parents are very important, right? So that culture is still alive, um, but I'm sure, and I'm happy to say that the arranged marriage is become much less apparent and much less frequent in
okay.
Iran and also outside. Yeah.
Mm. And Pastor, you mentioned a little bit earlier about when you're growing up in Iran,
Mm.
the population in your social circle is more homogeneous.
Yes.
There's very little foreigners
Mm.
interactions.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So because um I don't think this was the case before.
Okay.
Back in the day, I think we had people from Europe and from different regions of the world, like living and
Yeah.
working in Iran,
Mhm,
but at the moment, it's mostly
mhm.
just Iranians, Yeah.
Okay. So in Iran, are there any like international companies like the KPMG, the accounting firms having their offices there? And
I don't think there's those companies. Uh,
okay.
like well, it's because a lot of them are under sanctions, right? Like you
Oh, I
can't,
see. Okay.
you
Wow.
yeah, you can't operate let's
Mm.
say a KPMG or a Deloitte
Okay.
inside
Yeah.
Iran. Based on what
Okay.
I
I
know,
see.
there
Yeah.
are international
Mm.
companies. There's like trading companies, and especially in the south
Mm.
of Iran, in Kish and Qeshm. There are companies that are still active, like in construction. There are a lot of Chinese companies, based on what I know from China,
Okay. Yeah.
that are
Okay.
doing all these infrastructure projects. Um, but um, but no, you don't have like a Deloitte or KPMG. Um, in Iran, we don't have a Starbucks or McDonald's or Burger
Oh,
King,
I see.
right?
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So that's the thing. But it's interesting because they have improvised, like we have our own
Yeah.
version of Burger King and we have our own version of Starbucks, right? And hey, not to talk trash about brands here, but the food and then the drinks and everything is really good in Iran. So
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
like whoever travels to Iran, they should definitely enjoy the food and the drinks and the sweets and the pastries and the hospitality of people, right? Like
Yeah.
hospitality of Persians.
Mm.
Like we like to take care of our guests, right? We like
Okay.
to,
Yeah.
make sure they feel welcome, either in our country or in our home, doesn't matter, right?
Mm.
And it's just sad. It's just sad for, such great people to honestly, we deserve more. We deserve a much better living
Mm.
condition and a government. And because again, we are good people. We are not
Mm.
war raging barbarians that are looking to fight the world or, you
Mm.
know,
Mm.
um, or just cause trouble. No, we are kind,
Mm.
loving, peaceful people, you know?
Mm. Yeah. And Pastor here, let's talk a little bit about who, because there's a lot of Iranians who
Mhm.
migrated to different other countries,
That's right.
for better living, safer
Mhm.
environment for
Mhm.
themselves and for their children and families. Let's talk a little bit about the Iranian diaspora.
Mhm.
And because in here,
Mhm.
how's the sentiment, compared because you cannot travel back home
Yeah.
safely,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about that.
Mhm. Like the sentiment towards home, towards Iran, or
Yeah, because on one hand you want to help, but on the other hand you cannot go home.
mm. Well, a lot of people, like, you can. I mean, not now. Now, you know what's happening there. By the
Mhm.
way, there is no flights right now happening outside Iran and to Iran.
Yeah,
Like the flights
okay.
they're all canceled. Like, now. But a couple months ago, before all the stuff that we're seeing right now started to happen, yes, you could travel back and you could go.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
you know, um, I feel like for a lot of people, it's especially people that left after revolution or even before revolution, um, they they have memories of the past, right?
Yeah.
And they they grew up under a different system where things were really different and actually was better than what it is now, you know?
Okay.
So I heard from a lot of especially older people that uh like the past was so nice for them. They loved their childhood growing up in
Mm,
Iran. And it's hard to go back for them because they know it's not the same as before, right?
okay.
And I don't know, maybe some of them they do sort of over glorify the past,
Mm,
maybe, but for a lot of people,
yeah.
you know, their growing up, their living situation was so different back in the day. To challenges they experience, after moving from, because not everyone had the easy immigration, right? Like
Okay, yeah.
people had to
Mm,
become refugees in a lot of different countries, for example, right?
okay, wow.
and and they had to really go through some crazy steps. They had to go on boats, for example, right? Or they had to
Wow,
go on
okay.
on like on semis, like those big trucks, and hide, right? And like people that really wanted to get out,
Wow.
right? Um,
Mm,
so, and then they had to come here and start from scratch, work minimum wage jobs, multiple minimum wage jobs, for example, right?
wow.
While they have kids, right? So, like, even our immigration to here wasn't easy. Like, not everyone came here with lots of money, ready to
Mm,
start a company, ready to
mm,
just like establish. No, they had to start from scratch and they had to build a
mhm.
brand new foundation in a new country, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, who wants to live their country when they have everything
Mm,
there? Who wants to do that? But then, um, they're forced, right? Because of seeing what's happening and
mm,
then seeing, well, is there a future for my family here? Is there a future for my kids here,
mm,
right? And it's sad because a lot of people have died, while on the road to a different country, like, because of, it's
yeah.
dangerous, right? Either they've been
Mm,
captured by police of the other country, like border police, for example,
mm.
or they have died in the sea. Because it happens a lot, right?
Wow.
Because it's not the easiest way, right? You're in a
Wow.
boat with 20,000 other people, 10,000 other people, right? And it's not safe,
Yeah.
right? So yeah. Um, it's hard to speak on behalf of the diaspora, I realize
Mm,
that because there's so many different experiences, but um, what
mhm,
what we all agree on is that um, we need something different. Like we need change, right? We deserve
mm,
change. And we have fought for it. Um, we have people
mhm,
died because of this, right? So
mhm.
I guess that's the ultimate sacrifice, Joseph.
Yeah, and Parsa here talking about the Iranian diaspora here. Let's talk about the commonality here about
Mm,
home.
right.
Because for most Canadians and people living in Canada, home is something we take for granted.
Hmm.
We're born here, this is always home.
Hmm.
Compared to a lot of Iranians with a diaspora and also different cultures, different countries of people, it is not safe to go back home, to be disconnected.
That's right.
Home, which we take for granted, is a big deal because home is what we stay grounded, we build that security and safety that most people won't even know
That's
unless
right.
they lost it.
Hmm. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I would say most people are they feel connected to their roots, and I always believe that it's important to know where you came from, and your roots, right? Because you understand how that has resulted in shaping you to the person that you are today, right?
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it when I see when we have families, either mom is Iranian or dad is Iranian, and then the other partner is non-Iranian, such as, Canadian, Chinese, Latino, doesn't matter. They that Iranian partner, like the family tries to teach the kids about Iran and try to teach them how to speak Farsi, how to speak Persian, right? It's so nice. I will make sure to do that myself too because I think it's important to you for you to always know where you came from, where your grandparents are from, which culture uh
Yeah.
sort of shaped your parents, right? That you're informed about it, right? Um,
Mhm.
some people decide to just like cut ties and be like, you know what, it's
Mhm.
okay, you know what, it's past. But I have realized most people, even after living here for so many years, Joseph, they still feel connected to home. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
they may not even speak Farsi properly. Like they may
Mhm.
stumble when they speak Farsi, but they still know where the home is and who they're connected to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, Parsi. Yeah. So, Parsi, let's talk a little bit about because you do counseling.
Mm,
Based in Vancouver, busy here. You do
yes.
counseling, support individuals, couples, families here. And let's talk a little bit about some of your clients who are from Iran, What are some of the typical uh, topics that you guys discuss in the session?
Mhm, mhm. Well, you know, I've been fortunate to speak with a lot of immigrants and newcomers
Yeah, yeah,
here, right?
yeah. Mhm.
And for immigrants, I have noticed, um, again, this goes to our culture, but they are very responsible, right? They feel that they are, especially in males, in like men population, because I work with a lot of male clients in my practice.
Mhm.
They always like to provide for their family, and they like to
Mhm.
grow, and then what happens is when they feel tension, when they experience tension, they get stressed out. They become worried, what they need to do. But the desire to do better, I've realized. Um, I would say for a lot of families, talking about the the generational gap is something that they have difficulties. So kids talking to their parents, right? Let's say kids was born here or they came here, but there's years of distance between the kid age and the mom's or dad's age, right? So them understanding each other, that's one of the challenges they have. Listening to each other is it's one of the challenges they describe. And I think one more thing is that I always try to teach my clients is the ability to think for yourself, to be able to formulate your own decision making based on your own needs, voicing your own concerns, right? Um, because in a lot of families, there was always a dad or a mom making the decision for the kid, right? Or
Mhm.
sort of nudging them towards a certain direction. And then it turns out that the direction really didn't suit the person, didn't make them happy,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
I really try to focus on that so they can develop their own voice, they can create their own decision making, um, and then they can make their own decisions. Because I think there's something very liberating in that
Mhm.
that decision that I'm making now are my own decisions, not my family's
Mhm.
decision, not something that my uncle told me. You know what I mean? So it's just,
Mhm.
yeah, these are just some of the topics. Again, if I if I sit down and write about them, it's probably there's more, but these are the core ones.
It's a Parsa here. For the Iranian communities here,
Mm,
because on one hand, counseling is an evidence-based treatment model, same as medicine, medications. different specialty of doctors here. How
Mhm.
is it with the Iranian community from your clinical
Mhm.
experience?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, from my experience, I've realized that uh, maybe it's not the case that you have one theoretical orientation that works better.
Mm,
It's not that. It's rather understanding the client and
okay.
knowing maybe this one approach will work better for them. Like I said,
Okay.
in the diaspora, we have different folks.
Yeah.
We have
Mhm.
elderly, there is newcomers, there's people that have been here for 20 years, for example, and
Mm,
the kids of people that that have come here for 20 years. So it's a mixed bag, you know.
okay. How about
Um,
the perception of counseling? Let's say, um, do people accept it, receptive, or is still a taboo? And
mm. Well, I'm happy to say, in recent years, like I would say in the last 7 to 10 years, or even more, maybe 10 to 15 years, I would say, that perception that the previous generation had about counseling has changed, right?
okay, yeah.
So, uh, you know, uh, maybe the previous generation, when they thought about counseling, they said, "Oh, well, are you crazy? Are you crazy? Is that why you're going to counseling if you're only crazy, right?" Um, so now it has changed because um, people go to counseling and then they talk about different things and they tell their friends about it that hey, we're going to counseling. And I personally think it started with couples. you know when couples started seeing counselors, it became more normal, right? For individual counseling to happen. But I think marriage counselors and family counselors actually played such an important role because they normalized a family going to see a counselor and talk about different things, right? Um, so now, again, I'm happy to see a lot of pages on Instagram, for example, right? Talking about counseling, talking about mental health, right? Normalizing a lot of stuff that was taboo back in the day, for example, right? And with my own page, that's one of my goals too, to talk about these different topics and to normalize it even
Wow.
further, right?
Oh, that's great here. That's exactly my next question I'm gonna ask is
Yeah.
how do you envision yourself as a mental health counselor to
Mhm.
continue to expand the access of
Mhm.
counseling and the perception so people can be more receptive?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Uh, I think where I like to start is by making psychology as simple as possible
Okay,
for my
yeah.
audience. I think uh, that is really what it comes down to. Uh, the name of your podcast is Practical Psychology. Practical. Like that is the word, right? That is the word because a
Mhm.
practical, simple, rational topic is going to resonate with a lot of people, right? But
Yeah. Mhm.
and I recognize not a lot of people have time to go over and read the psychology book or a psychology article, right? But it's my job to you know get all the messages that are from that book or topic or the article and then tell people in a simple language, right? So
Mhm.
psychology becomes everyday, right? Becomes something that is accessible and people can learn about it, right? And secondly, they're not afraid to come see a therapist, right? Because it's not going to be a technical language, it's not going to be technical talk, it's going to be everyday talk, like they're talking to their friends, for example, or to their family members, right? So this way, um, going to see a therapist is not something huge, right?
Mhm.
It's something you do when you feel down, when you feel upset,
Mhm.
when you're stressed out, when you just or just you like to know yourself little bit more, right?
Mhm.
As we talked about it, we're complex. There's a lot of layers to us, right? So that's the vision that I have for psychology, and hopefully it's going to be achieved.
Oh, wow, that's great here. So
Yeah.
Parsa, here come to the end of our conversation here for
Mhm.
today.
Yes.
And if the viewer or other fellow clinicians have questions to ask you, where do they find you?
Of course. So my Instagram page, which is Talk to Parsa, so it's TALKTOPARSA. That is my Instagram page. That is the best place to ask question and find me. And yeah, I'm always happy to talk to my followers and my audience, and also to anyone that is curious about psychology and it's magic. I feel like there's something very magical about what we do, Joseph, and it's about sharing that magical element with as many people as possible.
Oh yeah, you mentioned a very great point here, Pastor. As fellow clinicians, we're both clinicians here.
Yeah,
We practice psychology and counseling. Obviously, we try to help a lot of people. We also acknowledge we ourselves really get helped
that's right.
by those psychology education. We're really thankful and want to share with everybody around us.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Pastor, it was great having you today, and we'll
Thank you.
invite you again, and we'd love to hear more of your stories.
Thank you so much, Joseph. And again, I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity and giving us the chance to talk about our experience. I'm sure a lot of Iranians listening to this podcast will really appreciate you for doing this. So thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. I'll see.